To the warriors of the red thread who follow their knowing no matter what, who embrace that they are power itself and make art and medicine from their obstacles. To the benevolent beings of Eros who vow to bring heaven to earth. To our many protectors in every dimension, our angels, our animal angels, and our feline guardians. To all those who came before and paved the way, and to the places that have held us and revealed the mysteries to us. To the underground mycelium network of information exchange and the teachers and guides who have held the light for us. As curators of this craft and artists of the erotic mandala, we offer the very best of our practice and the full excellence of our hearts and efforts. We offer our joy and our deep abiding enjoyment.
I wanted to add one from last week because I mentioned it. It's my favorite prayer. Supreme form, extremely great fury, intrepid one, enjoyer of supreme objects who acts to tame those hard to tame. To Vajrabhairava, I bow down. And I especially wanted to offer this today because we're going into electricity, Eros and electricity, and we've been swimming out in the endless sea. We just got back from sea with the Life of Pi. And this sea of emptiness where we are both the ocean and the wave, right? But really, the reason they say that is that you remember that you're the ocean because everyone thinks they're the wave. But I disagree in some ways. I think the feminine is the ocean and has lived that way. But that's a whole other talk I'm going to do at some other point in time. So I thought we'd start with this story. So let's see. Nasrudin. And so this story is very, very simple. It is, he's sitting in the marketplace and there's people everywhere and he's eating hot pepper after hot pepper, and tears are just streaming down his eyes. Now, it's important to understand that he is considered both the fool. In the talk I gave the other night, we talked about the fool and the madman is the artist, and the difference is the amount of illuminosity that exists inside of that madness. You know, the mere mad person just lives in darkness, and the mystic lives inside of this luminosity. And I think he falls into the latter category. So he's eating these hot peppers and tears are streaming down and snot is sneezing down and there's just, his face is red, he's in pain, it's terrible. But he is going through it, so it's another one. And the question comes, why are you doing this? Why? And he says, I'm looking for a sweet one. I'm looking for a sweet one. And Aubrey's going to give a little bit of Mark Epstein's view on this. He's a genius. He wrote a book called, I think he's a genius. He teaches sometimes with Robert Thurman, and the two of them are just mind-blowing to watch work together. But he wrote a book called Open to Desire that I feel is one of the great champions of desire, especially because it's written by a Buddhist. And desire is often conflated with the word tanha, which means thirst, which means greed, which is the exact opposite of what desire is. Desire is dynamic and it's movement, and tanha is fixation and contraction. So we listen to this story and we wonder, because as Mark Epstein will say, it's an enlightened master. So there's a lesson. There's a lesson inside of this. What might the lesson be?
Desire never learns. It never wakes up. Even when eliciting nothing but suffering, it perseveres. Our indefatigable pursuit of pleasure keeps us doing some awfully strange things. Certainly, Nasrudin is modeling our lives for us. Struggling against the tide of disappointment, we continue to search for a sweet one. As his friends must be wondering as they gaze at him incredulously, would it not be better just to give up? In this version of the story, Nasrudin is rendering a conventional spiritual teaching. Our desires bind us to the wheel of suffering. Even though we know that I am drawn to this story because of the way it embodies both the disturbing and the compelling nature of desire. As a psychiatrist and psychotherapist, I am confronted every day with clients whose stories resemble Nasrudin's. Over and over again, they engage in behaviors that from any rational standpoint, they should abandon. Their frustrations spill out in my office like Nasrudin's tears. I am tempted at times to respond as Nasrudin's friends do. Why not just stop? I want to say to them, why not just throw in the towel? As a therapist who has been influenced not just by the insights of psychodynamic theory, but also by the wisdom of Buddhist psychology, it would be easy for me to take this position. One reading of Buddha's teachings certainly suggests that the only solution to neurotic misery lies in forsaking desire altogether. Much of Eastern thought is based upon the idea that renunciation is the key to spiritual and psychological growth. Why search for pleasure if that search is the cause for suffering? Ask many teachers from the East. But over the years, I have come to appreciate that while there is a time and a place for this kind of logic, desire can be an important ally as well as a foe. As Nasrudin defiantly indicates, there is more to desire than just suffering. There is a yearning that is as spiritual as it is sensual. There is something salvageable from the original impulse.
And so he's a little bit more conventional than I am because I actually think that desire is a path in and of itself. But he begins to open a door. There is an impulse, and that's what we're learning to tune into. And so we begin to, we're now emerging from universal emptiness into a more defined role of Eros. And the beauty for me is, I was talking with somebody about this recently, Eros is, we have the impulse for the vertical. We have the impulse for God and idealism, but we also have this impulse for the horizontal, which is the everyday world. And normally, those two things are put in opposition to each other. And Eros bypasses that altogether and exists at that intersection, right smack in the middle of it. And because of this, Eros introduces a different idea. And the different idea that it introduces is Norman Fisher articulated this well, although, again, this is a religious pointing to, but he's both a Jewish scholar and a Zen priest. And somebody said, what is the difference between those two? And he said, as a Zen priest, I learned to live as one, just one. I learned to drop everything off so that I can experience the mind of the totality as one.
Including that.
I guess
including that.
We know my views on things. And he said, but as a Jewish scholar, what I see is the idea of two. And you have to work with a whole different set of circumstances in the two. You have to work with jealousy. You have to work with comparison. You have to work with competition. And that position of the two is often overlooked as a path. Martin Buber did a beautiful job in I and Thou. But there's an element to me that's distinctly feminine, a tenor of desire that has its own possession. It has it's a primary number in and of itself. It's an equal and complementary path to take. So but Hillman began to break it out. And so we'll give you really quickly what Hillman said.
One moment. I have it. Okay. The path of love. If each god has his own logos, then Eros too has his special logic and necessities. In art, he has often been pictured as a handsome adolescent, and in the story of Eros and Psyche, which James Hillman takes as his primary myth of psychoanalysis, He is the wild son of Aphrodite, easy to love and difficult to abide with.
Easy to love and difficult to abide with. Remember that.
He brings the psyche promises of pleasure and many occasions for suffering. He pleases without measure, and he tortures without any apparent misgiving.
Wait, say that again?
He pleases without measure, and he tortures without any apparent misgiving.
Right.
Rather than present a program of painless love, the aim of many psychologies.
And spiritualities. Go ahead.
Hellman explores the betrayals and impossibilities of love as valuable initiatory moments of the soul. Initiation is a rite of soul making. Innocence may have to be punctured. Idealized notions of self, other, and love may have to earn their ripening shadows. A third element may have to appear to keep the two in love from closing their world in on themselves.
So number one is, what was number one?
Number one was...
Idealized notions may have to be pierced. Mm-hmm. Idealized notions of self and other may have to be pierced. Number two, something must be introduced to keep the two from closing in on themselves.
A third element. Primal, Eden-like trust may have to mature so that one doesn't go about life with an innocence frequently shocked and undone by disappointment and betrayal.
That is so true.
Hillman speaks for love that is soulful, rounded with psychological reflection, and he speaks for psychological life that honors love as its principle. Eros always leads to psyche. Even, and perhaps especially, impossible loves invite interiorizing. As the ancient tale spells out, the soul tortured by love is in an ordeal in which specific initiations are carried out. The psyche's attachment to the love that is so difficult keeps it within the work of initiation.
How beautiful is that? Say that again, would you?
The psyche's attachment to the love that is so difficult keeps it within the work of initiation.
Okay, so I love everything about this, but part of what I like about this is that it gives dignity to a process that is human, and in such a way that we don't cut anything off. In our experience, to have those disruptions, those jealousies, those heartbreaks, those upsets, to have those cast in the position of an initiation, and to understand that it's undoing what would prevent us from the transcendent experience, well, okay, that's much better, I think, anyway. Mm-hmm. And then I just want to, let me see. Yeah, okay, so in a second I'm going to do my usual storytelling. I just have this funny quote. There's a character I shouldn't do that. I'll get in too much trouble, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is from Eros and the Mysteries of Love. The pair of lovers who have never had any babies. They love each other too much. The fire burns, consumes, and does not produce. When asked if she was sad because she had no babies, the woman answered, "I don't want any children. They're only useful to unhappy women." Ooh, someone's in trouble. Okay. So I'm just going to read this part because I'll do it kind of quickly. Yeah. So I love this. This is what we're working with, and what you get with the two, with the third being Eros. And she talks about the fact that there are three points of transformation on a circuit that are possible in relationship. Electrified by desire, so that they touch and are not touching. Conjoined, they are held apart. The third component plays a paradoxical role, for it both connects and separates, marking that the two are not one, and irradiating the absence whose presence is demanded by Eros. When the circuit points connect, perception leaps, and something becomes visible on the triangular path where the volts are moving that would not be visible without the three-part structure. So that's what I mean when I say the difference between a mirror 2 or a mirror 1 is this erotic connection. But what's so powerful, for this dance, the people do not move. Desire moves. Eros is a verb. We said that. So we're getting into the various eroses, and I'll do Eros and art, Eros and religion, Eros, and because now we're moving out into the expression of it in the world, and this is Eros in relationship. And I'll just start. So for my report, I chose the Taming of the Shrew, which is my all-time favorite Shakespearean production. And you'll see why shortly. But I happen to believe that within this lie, more wisdom than any canon or sutras I've ever read. It is so extraordinary and equally misunderstood, which would make sense. Again, I keep talking about the various eras that we're entering into. I think this is, through Shakespeare, was the foretelling of the era we will enter. And because to my mind, it introduces the most extraordinary understanding of play, which is, again, to my mind, the highest level of consciousness that exists. We'll talk about Leela and the various mythologies of play at some point, Eros and play. But what's so interesting is that it's so profoundly misunderstood and at the same time loved. So last week when we were doing the, I'm gonna do vulnerable again. So I did my talk, and one of the questions was, I even looked this person up today. This is funny. Was, did that young Nicole get everything she wanted? And I said, oh, well, she was very in love with this guy. She didn't get him, but she got everything else. And I had also told the story about how I wrote poetry and dramatically at the Upstart Crow in this place called the Prune Yard, this really dark, there were like dark ceramic floors and dark wood, tables, and I would bring all my books. I would go there because I could bring all of my books and I could write, and I could go outside and smoke cigarettes and drink. I didn't know caffeine kept you up, so I drank a lot of caffeine, and I didn't understand why I couldn't sleep. So I drank my coffee and read my poetry. And this guy worked there who was just, he was really, he was the key to my lock, I'll tell you that. And he even wore a beret. We both wore berets. We were meant to be. And he smoked cigarettes, and he had kind of a cigarette-y smell. And he wore this apron and black pants, and the kind of guy who had, his sleeves were rolled up in that really sexy way. And so he would look at all of my poetry, and he would say, "But have you read Blake?" And then he would write poetry on napkins and put the coffee down on the napkin, and then I'd lift it and I would pray that the ink wasn't smeared and read it, and I just was crazy about this guy. And and you can probably get the idea that we were not dead wires. Both of us were very much live wires. And he had a very strong presence. And we got together, and he was in Taming of the Shrew, Summer Stock. So I saw this production. It played twice a day for 8 weeks, and I went to almost every single show, so I've seen it a lot. And in fact, I watched him flirt with the woman who played Kate. And I had my own dramas out there in the audience. And then, and then as dramas go, and I was very expressive. I was expressive, and I was a handful, but he seemed to enjoy the handful of me until he had to go back to school on the East Coast, and it was very dramatic. He has to meet me near my house. He broke up with me, and I, threw myself on the sidewalk or something. And so everybody's heard me say, there was a guy who said, love is 4 letters too many for what I feel for you. That was him. That was then. And then, from my drama, I went home. It was near my house. My friend lived 2 doors down. We came home and we just started doing what you do. We watched General Hospital, and and then the phone rang. And when the phone rang, I had her pick it up. And so she picked it up, and it was him. Oh my God! And he was calling to see if I was okay, because that's what you had to do with me at the time, no matter what. And when he did that, she improvised, and she said, I'm not sure she's going to make it. We were watching General Hospital, so we were on the ride. I'm not sure she's going to make it. We'll see if she makes it through the night or something. And then, just having a nervous breakdown, the whole thing. And I was just watching her as she did it, but it worked for me. It wasn't bad. I liked it. And then, so we were watching television in the family room, and we hear, and then a park, and then we hear, and then we see somebody looking in my window, and we're just sitting there in our sweats watching General Hospital, and it's him, terrified that I've, slit my wrist or something dramatic. And then, anyway, the last thing he said to me was, you're worse than Kate in Taming of the Shrew. So that's my introduction to the play itself, which is, right? But we ended up talking at 21 when my mom called him and said, will you come? So it worked out, and it didn't work out, but it worked out as those things do. So the play itself, though, let's talk about the play itself. So there's a wealthy merchant, and his name is Baptista. He has 2 daughters. One is named Bianca. She's the fair maiden, the demure one, the sweet one. And then there's Catarina, and she is the wench and the shrew. And we didn't play our video, did we?
It's on there. We can play it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll play right now, so you get a taste of her. It's not here. It is here? Okay. So in this story, that's the first one is actually the beginning version of her. And there's these 2 sisters. Obviously, she's the more challenging one, and Lucretio falls in love with the fair sister, but they've all heard that the father has said that no one will marry the fair sister until Catherine has been married off. And so 2 men are in love with her. One is a kind of meek guy, right? And then the other is a wealthy older guy who's just dazzled by her play, her expression. And those were you saw how she responded to that. And she will not be tamed. And but then, there's a swarthy man named Petruchio, and Petruchio sails into town. And when he sails into town, he says something on the order of, "I wouldn't mind having some wealth." And it's been said that anybody who marries her will get this dowry. And he decides then and there that he will marry her. And then he sees her. He meets her. And he says to the father, I will have her. She will be my wife. And they go to get married. When they go to the chapel, he doesn't show up. But then he shows up late, and he shows up just dressed as a fool. And she's embarrassed. But alas, they still get married. So they get married, and he says to her, I will tame you. And this, remember, this is somewhat controversial in our culture. I will tame you. And then he, then from there, he does. And how he does this is he won't let her eat or sleep, and he won't give her any of the luxuries that she's accustomed to. And so after 4 days, he says, what you just heard, the version of what you've just heard, he demands that she sees things the way he does. That's the demand. It shall be moon or star, what I list. And then that's where she says, what you have it named, even that it is. And so it shall be for Catherine. Okay? So the story goes that she's so exhausted that she gives up. Okay, then there's a few things happen, a lot of drama, wonderful. And then the final scene. In the final scene, the father, Baptista, Lucretio, and Petruchio are all together with the 3 wives. Well, the widow, the fair daughter, and Bianca, and Catherine. So they're all together, and Petruchio says, I challenge you guys to see who has the most submissive wife for a certain amount of money. Well, we all know he's not going to win. This is insane. So during this time, though, it's important also to understand the fair sister, Bianca, and Lucretio have run off and gotten married, and they've come back, okay, without the father's permission. So all 3 are together. The father calls out for the widow. She doesn't come. Then Lucretio calls out for Bianca. She doesn't come. And then Petruchio calls out for Catherine, and Catherine not only comes, but she comes in all subservience. And in that subservience gives a lecture on the power of being a subservient woman. How about that? I wish you guys online could see, because every face I looked at just went. I'm not sure how this fits into a story that would be here on the Eros platform. This sounds biblical. So I'll tell you. And there's a wonderful writer, and I'm so sorry I don't have her name. If you could find it, Ia. But there's a wonderful writer. It's very rare that I agree with other people's accounts of what something is. But she wrote an article in Quillette, and the article is called Game, Set, Match. And so I broke down some of these, but they're also some of my thoughts. And so I broke it down in 10 different points that are why. They're the why this story ignited me at 16 years of age and sent me on the wild ride that it did, looking for things I did not know existed. And if you read this story, or talk about this story in any kind of liberal, or in any kind of if you talk about it in women's studies, we'll say, really what you hear immediately is devastating. He's gaslighting her. He's a narcissist. This is misogyny. This is the patriarchy at its worst. How could he do that? He's grooming her. It's horrific. And I think that we might begin to see it differently. So one of the ways that the author, and I'll give you her name at the end of this, one of the ways that she writes about this, which is so lovely, is she says, one of the points is, He's offering her a magic circle, a space for play. If viewed as this is her language, if viewed as a pert invitation, Petruchio's outrageous claims may seem not an attempt to get her to question reality, but to enter into imaginative play with him. I wish you could see the faces now. Petruchio wants to pretend with Kate. The last thing on his mind, on his interpretation, is to control her perception of reality or her will. His desire is instead to bring her into a sort of magic circle, a space made for him and for her where they will play together, see the world as one, and laugh about it. Their marriage is to be an inside joke. Their marriage is to be an inside joke. So we talk a lot about intimacy and the amount of intimacy that one could experience were they in this deep relationship here, together performing out here, would be profound. It would be all the more salient. And in all mystical traditions, there's a secret level. The secret level is the most fertile level. It's hidden. And so it's almost like the most ripe fruit that's hidden. The sweetest berry is in that hidden place. But they're colluding together for that. Okay, number 2. What I love in this, and this is what probably I would not have gotten in so much trouble in my life had it not been for Kate, but it was because I saw a woman playing. I saw a woman daring to be in her full expression, but also in her full jousting capacity. And if you look at it in a funny way, she doubles him. So he issues the first order, I say it is the moon, well then it is the moon. But she has to play the straight man to his initial lob with as dry a humor that might be mistaken as actually being seen as dim. And I think that is really important, especially because it speaks to the example. She's one of the few examples of a woman who I think presents as self-possessed, which is so funny that it's so controversial in the humanities department. But because the amount of confidence and self-possession that you would have to have in order to play that counterpart, in order to meet him, incredible, right? And skill. So when he isn't joking, when he isn't joking about is that he needs the wife to get the joke. So he says he has her see this old man as a young virgin. So she goes up to the old man and says, "Young budding virgin, fair, fresh, and sweet. Happy the parents of so fair a child. Happier the man whom favors stars allots thee for his lovely bedfellow." Now it's a double joke in that the innuendo here is about the young maiden finding a lover, knowing full well that it's a joke, that it'll be appreciated by her husband. So she's making a joke for him while in this really uncomfortable situation. Can you imagine doing that? The amount of improv that they're living in. So she's lost none of her verbal virtuosity. What you're seeing is not a woman gaslighted, but a woman in her pure genius. And then Shakespeare gives her a new word. So she says, she realizes, oh no, it's this old man. "Pardon, old father, my mistaking eyes. They have been so bedazzled by the sun," that's the new word, "that everything I look on seemeth green." Well, bedazzled. So one of the things that the author suggests is that when Shakespeare introduces a new word, and he introduced so many new words into our vocabulary, but that when he does that, what he's doing is communicating to the audience the character's imaginal powers, the capacity to make up and create language in that moment. And so it's a wink to the whole idea of Petruchio's about it being the moon, as well as her teasing way and excusing herself for calling the old man a young maiden. So her husband must be grinning widely at his wife's mad mistaking, which I love the language of this. So the next part is we get clearer if we read it from this different vantage point. We get clearer that he sees her as an equal, and that as an equal, that makes her worthy of play. So there's this. That one moon line is very controversial around. So, but what this author says is that through a fog of prescription and proscription that renders all dreary and muted, if there is gaslighting going on, it isn't being done by Petruchio, which I love. It speaks to her power. So our culture conditions us to think in relationships must be ethical, by which we mean egalitarian, which turns out to mean a quality that is hard to distinguish from flatness. So then the next part is, and I love this, he wants a partner in crime. That's what he's looking for. And so he says, and good morrow, Kate, for that's your name, I hear. And so her response then is, well, have you heard? But something hard of hearing, they call me Catherine, that do talk of me. And then his response, he calls her Kate 11 times. But then he goes on, and this is what's beautiful, to joust with her. And throughout this, you begin to see her tamed in a very different way than our conventional ideas of how to tame a woman. We have the idea that you tame a woman by dominating her, controlling her, ignoring her, leaving her, or you just don't even try. And there's a method here. And the method is to be a person who has such deep and profound reverence for what's inside of her that it can come out and express, and in the play she organically tames. Not only does she tame, but she becomes profoundly, I don't know if the word is devoted, but profoundly aligned with, profoundly intimate with, profoundly united with him. Beyond any kind of taming, she is now with him in this endeavor, and both are in the play of joy. So he says, come sit on me. And then she says, asses are made to bear, and so are you. And he says, women are made to bear, and so are you. So, and then after that, she sits on him, and apparently she's the bearer of his child. So, this is the other part that I like. There's a reason why we use the same word to describe a sporting competition and two equals who are harmoniously united. Set, match, game. Kate and Petruchio are a perfect match. So then the other thing that he does extremely well, if we want this to be a man course, is he is unrelenting in his advance. But as a straight man, we'll say, or the straight comic character, because he doesn't say, I'm so besotted with you, I'm so taken with you. That's what the other two guys were doing, right? What he says is, myself am moved to woo thee for my wife. Now, Kate, I am a husband for your turn. And the fact that he says it in that dominant way allows her the space to open and be soft. And I think he says it, I can't remember how many times after this, he says, thou must not be married to no man but me. For I am he born to tame you, Kate. By the way, that's another controversial one, that a man would tame a woman. Conformable as other household Kates. Here comes your father. Never make denial. This is about the wedding. I must and will have Catherine to my wife. And this is so wonderful because Shakespeare made a character that had enough nuance to draw a woman out, that he knew this is unimaginable. It's not common knowledge in our world these days. But he knew the essential stroking skill of pulling back just slightly, but never losing contact and letting the desire to be there be clear. And then I love the fact that he calls her Kate, because Kate means both wildcat and delicacy. But she keeps saying, no, it's Catherine. Anyway, and then the other argument is the patriarchy. This is a patriarchal story, the patriarchy. But here's what's interesting. Her wealthy men want her, but she doesn't go there. Other men want her, but she doesn't go there. See, so it's made clear that this is not patriarchal. She is a woman who has made her own choices despite being wanted by the patriarchy. And then, this is my favorite part, and that's that they're vulnerable. They're both vulnerable in their play, and that play is, in fact, far more vulnerable than confession. You know, or processing, right? We process. And even though we sound like we're saying something, it's not actually very vulnerable. It's just kind of vomiting. You're just kind of vomiting together, and which could be, vulnerable in its way. But in play, as in combat, one takes a real chance because uncertainty is a part of the playful spirit. Play is dangerous because it's a risk. Every joke is a risk. Let me tell you how many jokes I make that are a risk because nobody gets them but me. And then every flirtatious comment might be rebuffed. And so one risks looking foolish or brutish, or as she says here, downright criminal, Petruchio. So he doesn't pull any punches, and people think that is offensive. And he triumphs over her without holding back, and that he thinks enough of her to trust that she will hold her head up high when beaten by him, not physically beaten in the game by him, and that he knows she will honor him for besting him. He never enters into besting her, and this never enters into the wildest imaginings of the people who cast him as a negative character. So we have a lot of toxic mimics of these relationships, and mere rigid dominance, or the kind of mere reticence in the background, the timid reticence, or the pretending, can't begin to get close to this level of play that's available. But it has to be lifted up out of the conditioned ideas. And the primary conditioned idea is, I would say, I once took this class, and the teacher said women think men are dumb, and all of the women nodded. And then the other teacher said, women think men are dumb. And everyone nodded. And so there is a way, this discounting of each other that occurs that doesn't allow this full expression of what wants to be expressed. And so they play for the same team. And so they play, so they have agreed that they play for the same team, and that but she's discovered this trick, that in her subservience and elevation of him, he raises higher, and so does she. And so it's a collaboration, and that's what I love the most, is this idea. So, and then the final piece that I wanted to add is, don't be fooled by the world of appearances. The one who disobeys, Bianca, she runs off and gets married without her father's permission. And the one who actually is love is the only way I'll say it, does obey, is seen as the wild winch. And the last part where she gives this speech is really powerful, because you see kind of the state of relationships in that final portion. What you see is these two men with these women who won't come, who they married because these women were so obedient, and then the man who dared take on the wild woman, who is now his partner. And the last line, the very last line of the play is, come now, I think it's come now, Kate. Oh, come, Kate, well to bed. And so there's the understanding that they're always playing together, and that they actually have a sex life. They actually have turn on, and that's how you get it, is through play. So that's my little dealie. And then let's see if we want to do anything else, or we can take. Oh my God, we can take some questions. Yeah, we'll take questions.
Okay, for those of you who have questions online, you can go ahead and submit them into the chat box, and then we'll take a few questions in the room. Rachel?
Very much identify with this character, and I feel like I often hold my tongue because it's very biting, and I don't want to be a very biting person, but often the first iteration feels like it would be sharp or mean. And so I was wondering what you would say to women who want to express but don't want to be a bitch.
Yeah, I always think of Ed's thing. When you turn on a faucet, rust comes out at first before it runs clear. And then what I'm always secretly curating for is people who can withstand play. What I'm always secretly measuring is to what capacity they can withstand it. And that's part of play. And the vulnerability and error of it is part of it. And how do you do it without being a bitch? I don't know. I think I don't know why you would. Why would you? Why would you be a bitch?
I think often the first response is snarky.
So, okay, great. So then I would cast this kind of play. Oh, maybe I'll do. Maybe we'll go a few minutes late if anybody doesn't. Did you guys mind? I'll read this little thing that I wrote. But I cast, play as making love, and there was a time back when I used to flirt, and I would have many lines of play going and be making love with the person on the other end. And so if I'm making love, the aim is to delight. I think maybe it has to do with the aim. And so maybe my guess would be I am pretty confident that I'm a fairly consummate player. So in that, I don't have anything to prove. And the snark or something of that nature usually is a dominance play. And that's in a sense counter to the aim of making love. How's that? Okay. And it's also to not be so in love with your message, because that's hard. Sometimes people want to be really clever, but clever is nothing compared to what moves someone. That's the new clever is what will move another human being. A long time ago, I was talking with somebody, text talking with somebody, and I didn't have a full gauge on their play. And back in the day when I used to flirt, I used to like musicians and, stroking my body like an instrument. And so what I think most men don't know is you can feel, especially if you've cleared your occluded mind, and especially if you trust yourself. It's another piece. So both, and when that happens, you can feel in the airwaves, you can hear in the airwaves, you can tell when the thoughts are being had about you. It's all right there. It's like you're reading a printout, and then you're reading this printout that's like, a steamy, sexy novel. And they write, hey. And so, I couldn't figure out how to say, what is that? And something feels a little bit different. Is that? And the other thing I do when I first play is I ask a lot of questions. Oh, did you actually feel something different from what you just wrote? Yes. Okay, good. So then when I remembered he was a musician and a fairly skilled musician, and I said, if you were to describe what the feeling was as a song, how would you do it? So it's in love with the process of finding that perfect connection, that you so much in love with that process that because that ring, when that thing rings out, there's nothing like it. When you both are in that place where they're both so vulnerable, and the connection is made, and the zap happens in your room, and then you can say in that moment, "Did you just feel that? I felt that. If that were a song, what would that song sound like?" and then it's just delight. You're just really trading in delight, because that's how the world makes love.
Thank you.
How's that? Good? I like that. Yeah, I'll give you all my dating tips. I'll pass them down. Today I used to be a lover. Let me see if I want to do this. Oh, is there another question?
There's one question online. How do you stay connected to let the play emerge when it doesn't feel like play?
It's a great question. That's a really great question.
I can give it a shot.
Huh?
I can give it a shot.
Great,
Yeah.
do it.
You can be the one to bring play anytime, is what I would say. Like, you decide. If it doesn't feel like play, then you feel into how you would like to play and how you would introduce play into that moment. There's not really any thing that could be happening that couldn't be turned into play,
Brilliant.
although it can definitely look like that, but then that's kind of your challenge. And so you can turn it into play, and the person might even resist it for a number of strokes or moments or whatever, but then if you kind of stay with it and you're dynamic enough, I liked what you said about not being too attached to your message, you know. If you let it be dynamic enough, then they'll usually just eventually get on your play ride, because it's better than whatever like ride they're on.
Good. That's so good. And then you can also, you know, they say, you know, a great pianist falls in love with the growth of being a great pianist. And so then you can delight in your capacity to play in places you have never played. Somebody wrote me last night on, I think it was Instagram. He had just experienced me in a way that I hadn't put myself out as, through someone else's eyes, we'll say. And so he said, you know, you could sense he was a little bit nervous. What do you think about the way that people think of you? I mean, I don't want to make you uncomfortable or anything. He actually was an extraordinarily clean person, because I get a lot of the other in my messages too. And I thought, how do I play here? How do I play? Because there's somebody who has just seen a projection of me. Then there's somebody who is uncomfortable asking. But then there's somebody who felt a strong enough karmic connection. I mean, why would you DM somebody you watched something about? You just wouldn't. And then, so how do I play with all of that information? And so I just said, I tend to look at it like this. People view me through whatever motivations they have around sexuality. And it's either dark and seedy, or it's divine and exalted. And that's not what I'm about. And he said something like, yeah, I didn't think you were just about sexuality. And I said, in fact, I'm not about sexuality at all. I'm about coming out of suffering, the cause of suffering, and helping others do that. And sexuality just happens to be the primary area where we're all stuck in one of the greatest causes of suffering. But it's not, if the primary area that I saw us being stuck in was shopping, then I would do a whole shopping sutras. But that's not where we're stuck. You know, there's this very stuck pocket in our culture that if we liberate, will bring about tremendous energy. But anyway, what I can say is, there's the delight of making it through that tight spot. And the delight, nobody could give you that. There's nothing anybody could have ever done for me to give me the sensation of making it through. And I've, you know, it used to be that somebody would just say, you know, I don't like your shoes, and I would crumble for weeks. I love my shoes, by the way. And so to actually begin to see, oh, I can play there. And to me, that is the true test of all things. Can you play here? Whatever it is. And you keep throwing yourself into situations that you could never play in before. And oh, it's so humiliating. It's so humiliating when you come back, you know, and you sound like, you know, Genghis Khan or something because you're too hard, or you sound like Aunt Mildred because you're too tentative, and you're just trying to get it, but then you get it and it rings, and you know, once you've had one taste of the divine, nothing else will do, and you'll do anything to get it. That is the divine. That is the taste. And so you want worthy people to play with. I mean, I agree with you 100%. You always get to play. You don't always have to tell the person that you're playing with that you're playing, because they might be bummers, but you can entertain yourself. Right?
Yes.
And so you can just delight in how you're moving around all of those darts that they think you're the dartboard for. Yeah? Okay, I'll just do part of this, and we're going to do a new video of this. But this is just I have this little poem, but Petruchio is in there, so I thought I'd share it. And so she's love. And while they think her a hellcat, a shrew, she is nothing if not amenable. You find her in her hometown on the outskirts of dream, chasing you down cobblestone alleys, issuing exams you were not prepared to take. This, her cheeky taunt, that after she went through all the trouble of taking form, Of your silent prayers, you walked past her, eyes cloudy from past abandonments, blurred to the real. She laughs to the luminescence that you slip into, eyes heavy as you fall. She stirs your pot, unprocessed material of the day, prepares a mind meal rich with symbols and signs. It's a rigged map that always leads to her. But drunkards, most are drunk on the elixir of sleep, can't walk the straight line. When she's a monster, you run. When she's a deity, you swoon. She drinks your emissions that she might inseminate the egg to birth into another material woman once more. This time, one you might recognize. In flesh, she leaves clues. I do not lose, she says with inordinate conviction. She can afford the bravado. She is yours, the smoke to your flame. As long as you burn, she lives. Snuff out the light, and she is the match that reignites. She is the lost canon of love. Not the thou shalt book everyone reads in the hotel room, the one she wrote to conceal herself so that only the most formidable might find her. She is the joust that seeks her equal. Her sword to be stopped in play, her wrist grabbed, her body pulled close as she evaporates into a mist that covers your warm brow. No woman has ever loved you as I love you, she whispers, like cocaine, uncut, too pure for the uninitiated. Subservience itself bows to her. She is a galaxy of imagination, awaiting only the imaginative. She learned the hard way one day, cloaked in romance or earnestness, that this does not deliver her the men who could meet her. Too weighty, it drags them into the realm of heavy sleep where no dream lives. It passes for love in the ordinary world. Those men, upon the kiss, glimpse the galaxy of her mouth and black out. She's picked too many up from the groundless ground, carried them back to their warm bed, tucked them in, and encoded the words it was only a dream to activate upon their awakening. But yes, she is prayed into being, zipping up flesh and slipping on bones when the prayer proves fervent enough. Like I said, she's nothing but amenable. She knows the exact measurements and depths of the yearning in your heart, the faith on a string ready to snap. She knows your ways and your charms. She conforms to the shape of the charmed. She knows the hardness of your armor. She feels your jaw grind with it. But that heart, she knows every corpuscle. She issued it. She will not take it, though. What fun is that? Offer, 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 dear man. But discreetly, of course. Give her just enough. That leaves room for desire in the form of a question to build. And she will do just the same. This is how you build the sky. She once met Petruchio. Oh, how he incensed and delighted. When she was a tree, he pruned her branches unkempt, but kept whispering, "This hurts now, but will allow you to grow." He scaled her when she was a mountain, abstaining from the final step that would lead to her peak. I could, he warned, but I like you on top. As a guitar, he played her slow, aching notes. Please, her strings moaned, more. With glee, he sang, "There's more where that came from," and stopped, right there, strumming. He moved his light and shadow, drawing her transfixed around corners, disappearing into the crowd, each now more radiant. He hid in the all. She found herself asking rocks and oranges alike, "Is it you?" He came as sun, introducing himself as moon. She bit her salivating tongue. "Oh, yes, dear. You are like the light of 100,000 autumn moons." He came, stooped as old man, introducing himself as fair maiden. Past the wrinkles and toothless grin, she gazed into the buxom and milky girl who calls in lust and repels propriety. "Just there," he said. "I want you just there," as she stretched in opposing directions, having never been stretched before. He stretched her to tears, but stretch she did. Droughts ended, rivers flowed from those tears. It has been said that there are more water molecules in bodies than stars in the Milky Way, that this water is constantly reading for potentials. He stretched her to that potential. That sweat and tear alike poured. He guzzled her down. She would not give him a dry well and rubbed thighs together that might drink more. Laughter roared as thunder, delighted with the ingenuity she employed. It's that you might feel bliss, he offered. He reached a hand into the far eastern canyons, and springs sprung. She poured, and the thirsty drank. He electrified, and the dark worlds innovated bulbs to capture his glow. It was an era of joy for all. That is, before the collective swallowed the great pills of slumber, and between them, a heavy, lidded density grew, an absorbing black hole of silence. Kali Yuga descended like a dark curtain onto which projected nightmares and bad omens. She urged the molecules of people to please, please, please open their eyes that she might cross the chasm that now lie between them. It's play, it's delight, she declared, and they fussed and fixed, choosing to see the dance of the Dervish as the merry-go-round of samsara. With the urgency of love that only love could drive, she broke rules, she bypassed propriety. She drove through stop signs into the groins and bodies of all. She lit snake candles at the base of every spine with a wick. She risked the mania of the masses as their shadows were exposed to light. And this is where we find them today. And this is where we find them today. Not sure, never sure, if it will be enough to draw him down to her jewel.